Okay. So, hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Michael Fortin. I am the QuickBooks instructor for this evening. I've been a QuickBooks instructor for more than 15 years anyway. I'm probably closer to 20 now at this point. I have my education degree from Thomas College and have worked primarily with adult learners since the mid 90s. And so I think this year actually marks my 30th year of teaching. So it's a bit of an anniversary, and it's amazing how it has gone by so quickly. But um, so in working with adult learners over the past, let's say, 10 years, I've partnered with SCORE, and we've done a number of these workshops throughout the state, both in person, and then more recently, especially after 2020, we've been doing exclusively on a virtual platform. So it's just a great way to have everybody get exposed to one of the very powerful and commonly used tools in the world of business, and that's QuickBooks. And we'll talk a little bit more about QuickBooks here in a moment, but um, I am going to put my uh, contact information up on the screen so you can see. So tonight's session is the basic introduction of QuickBooks Online, and we'll be going till about 7:30. So just a short session, but enough to get us familiar with QuickBooks Online. And my email address is there. If you'd like to ask any questions after the session is over, it's michaelwfortin@gmail.com. And while I leave that up for a moment, just I guess some basic housekeeping things. Again, this is meant to be interactive. This is an opportunity for us to engage in discussion, to talk about QuickBooks, for you to ask questions, and to talk about different functions of the QuickBooks software. So if you would like to ask a question, please simply unmute your microphone. If you're new to Zoom, on the bottom of the screen, there is a toolbar inside of Zoom where you can turn on your video, you can unmute your microphone. So please make use of that and jump in and ask questions. If you have no microphone for some reason, your microphone is not working, if you'd like to type in a question, you can use the chat feature, which is also at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And I see we had a few more classmates. They've disappeared for some reason, but I do have Angela, Sophia, and Valerie here tonight. So why don't we start with Angela alphabetically, right? We'll just go down the list. If you could just introduce yourself briefly. What I'd like to know is what brings you here to the workshop, and if you have any experience with QuickBooks, that would be helpful to know, or if you're a brand new user and never used it, that's totally fine too. So Angela.
So I am the executive director of the Ellen Leach Home and Brewer. It's an independent senior living facility. I've been there for about 7 years.
Mhm.
My wife actually owns Fundamental Foot Care and wanted me to take this class so I can kind of help her do her basic bookkeeping. She has accountants and whatever. I've helped her a little bit, but I'm not, an expert in it. I have dabbled in QuickBooks a little bit, but I'm just basically here to learn more.
Fantastic. Do you use the QuickBooks Online
Yeah,
version?
yes.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Thank you, Angela. Sophia, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Sophia. I am not in business now,
Okay.
but I just curious about this class, and also I would like to get more information about what the QuickBook means, because I've hopefully in the future I will have a business, so it maybe will help me successful in my business. Thank you.
Great. Yes, thank you. So you've never used QuickBooks before?
No, I'm not right now. I'm just a student.
Oh, it's fine, totally fine. That's good. I oftentimes when people will say they've never used QuickBooks, um I always point out that that means that there's no bad habits to unlearn, right? Because you're starting fresh, brand new. So that's great. Well, welcome aboard to you as well. And last but certainly not least, we have Valerie. Hello, Valerie.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So I own a small coffee shop and roastery. We roast our own coffee for our shop.
Nice.
I've used QuickBooks the previous, I don't know, probably 2, 3 years, but I don't really like it.
That's okay. That's fair.
That's probably me because I'm not a tech savvy person. My husband likes it. But I'm the one that takes care of all of our books. And I use online and on my phone just because it's easier to take pictures of receipts with my phone.
Yeah.
The hard part I find about it is I don't know what to categorize everything into, or what, like business wise, what I can write off and what I can't.
Sure, I understand.
So
Yep,
I figured
that's
that maybe a beginner class would be good for me to learn all of that stuff.
well, great. Well, thank you, Valerie. It's
Yeah.
nice to meet you and all of you. So, well, okay. Well, we are gonna touch. That's very helpful for me to know. Actually, that feedback that you all gave me, it does help me to make sure that the material is appropriate to the audience. And if I say something that's not quite clear, or if you want me to clarify anything, or if you just simply have a question, don't forget to just unmute and speak right up. We have a small enough group that we can do that, and it can be interactive. So all right, well, let's get started, because this there's an awful lot of material. QuickBooks is a comprehensive program. There's a lot to it. Not everybody uses all of the features, but if you were to sit down and try to learn and take a class to learn the entire software package, it roughly the typical schedule is like a 15-week session where you would do 3 hours a night, so about 45 hours of classroom time if you wanted to do the entire course. So for just a one night workshop, we're just glossing over the surface, but it gives you some idea, how it works, what types of things you can do with it. But there's a lot we don't cover. But in the SCORE catalog of courses, we have a number of sessions that we have done in the past. We've done the single night workshops on different topics like this. We've also done a 4-night, like a 4-week or 4-class session, where we cover in more in depth some of the basics. So if that's something that interests you, you should reach out and respond to SCORE and let them know that, and then we can set up something, because if there's enough demand, we'll certainly offer something. Sometimes it's a little harder to get everybody to commit to 4 nights. Everyone is just so busy. It was just more recently we've started experimenting with just the single topic sessions. That seems to be a little easier, but even still, we had like over 20 people register for tonight. It looks like we only have 3 who showed up. So sometimes it's hard to know, right? But anyway, so let's kind of dig in a bit. I'm gonna cover just some basic learning objectives to get you started on introducing what QuickBooks is all about. We'll talk about QuickBooks Online and just a really high-level comparison of the different versions of QuickBooks. We'll talk about how to use Test Drive, which you'll find, I think, helpful. Not only will we use it tonight, but it's also helpful just to experiment in using QuickBooks on your own, and doing so in a safe way so it doesn't disrupt any of your real company information. We'll have an overview of the user interface, how to navigate the various menus using the navigation bar and accessing the different centers within QuickBooks. And then we'll do a brief demonstration on how to record sales and how to enter expenses. I know that Valerie was talking about one of her challenges is how to categorize different expenses. So there's really two perspectives, I guess, of learning QuickBooks. One is the software itself and learning how to navigate and which screens to go to and where to enter things. That is relatively simple. Actually, once you get familiar with it, you'll find that most people pick that up pretty quick. The second piece are the accounting fundamentals, the bookkeeping fundamentals, like what's the proper way in which we enter transactions. So QuickBooks generally makes that as easy as possible because it delivers the easy to understand, like forms and different screens, so that you can just simply fill out the forms to enter what you want to enter. QuickBooks does all of the heavy lifting or the accounting type entries in the background. But one thing that you do have to specify, especially when you enter expenses, is how to categorize them and how to label them. And we won't be talking so much about the fundamentals of accounting. We do more so in the 4-night session that we do, but knowing that Valerie is curious about it, we'll see if we can cover that as much as we have time for, because I know it's important to you and probably important to all three of you if Valerie was wondering about it too. So just the overview of QuickBooks. There's 3 versions. The online version, which we are going to be working in, and then there's the PC desktop or enterprise edition, and then there's a Mac version. The online version is now the primary version of QuickBooks that's out there. Over time, Intuit has slowly started to shut down or make it so most people will transition to the online version just because of the fact that they no longer support some of these older products. Most everybody is on like some kind of device that's that's portable. Fewer people have stationary computers, and they work off their tablets and laptops and phones. And the QuickBooks Online system makes that much more easy to navigate than trying to install an app or a piece of software on it. So the online system is great for that. And the benefits of QuickBooks Online being that it's cloud-based, that it's accessible from any type of internet-enabled device that has access to a web browser. So if you're on an iPhone, an Android, a PC, or a tablet, any of those devices can access your QuickBooks Online company, because they all share a web browser that's common. So as long as you have a web browser, you can access it. And the past, some of these other, like the desktop version and other versions, if you were using the desktop version of QuickBooks, you could not easily bring that information into other types of systems like a Mac or what have you, because they were very very much specific to the type of operating system it had. So anyway, so that's why the online system is real popular. It is now all monthly subscription based, no matter which version you have, they're all based on a monthly fee. There are 4 basic levels of the subscription for online. You've got Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, and Advanced. And most students I work with are using either Plus or Advanced because the younger or junior versions of Simple Start and Essentials don't have some of the key critical functionality that you might have for a small business. So if you have a business where you sell inventory, for example, a coffee shop, might be example of that. If you want to track your inventory, there's no inventory functionality in Simple Start. So you have to upgrade to like the Plus version to be able to use it. And if you are invoicing customers and you are interested in doing any sort of time billing, or depending on the type of business, you'll find that a lot of these things will require that Plus subscription, which is why most people end up using it. So this is just is a lot of information on this slide, but it shows you the basic monthly price. So Simple Start is $30 a month, Essentials is $45, Plus, Essentials is $55, Plus is $85 a month, and Advanced is $200 a month. You may actually be paying less depending on if you happen to get in on a little promotion or an intro deal or something like that, but the prices do fluctuate some depending on how you signed up. But once all those promos are done, this is kind of the basic pricing that they offer. So and then if you want to have employees, you pay an additional cost to have payroll, as well as the per employee cost that's charged to you for that. So the actual subscription models for like all of the different pieces now, like whether you're doing desktop or Mac, are all based off of just this monthly fee. And so if you were to compare all of them, over time, QuickBooks Online used to be very expensive, but now they've made them all about as expensive. So now they're just about, they're made so that the online version seems to be like the most logical choice. So that's how they've gotten a lot of their users to move away from these other software packages. The other thing is that these prices are based on each company that you have. So if you have another business, like 2 businesses, then you would pay this monthly subscription for each business, because each EIN or each SSN, each tax ID number requires a different subscription, so you can't share them. The other versions, like desktop, you can have an unlimited number of businesses for one monthly fee, but the online is paid per subscription per ID. And there's a lot of information on this slide as well, but if you just kind of stand back and look at the chart at high level, you'll see there's 4 columns, 1 column for each version of the QuickBooks Online software. And going down the page, you'll see all of the different functions. So with Simple Start, for example, which is the first column where you have X's in it, you'll see that you don't have many X's compared to the Plus column, which is the third one over. So with each version of QuickBooks, each subscription level, you would naturally get more features and functions that become available to you. And Advanced being, of course, the product that gets you everything. So that's pretty much it about online. the desktop version, just real quick, there are actually 4 different options. You have Pro, Premier, Enterprise, and Accountant, and those are subscription based too. If you were to try to go to buy the desktop software and go to the Intuit website, you'd probably have a hard time finding it because it's buried pretty deep in there. They really want as many people as possible to sign up and use the online version of it. And just, you know, quickly, there are products like the desktop version that will no longer be supported. After July 31st of this year, it will no longer be selling any new subscriptions to the Desktop Pro, Premier Mac, or Enhanced. So if you're already an existing subscriber and sign up before July 31st, then you can keep using it as long as they support it. But this doesn't include like the accountant version of QuickBooks Desktop. And if you have that product, then you can continue to use that. That's not affected by this. But you can see just an example of how QuickBooks over time starts peeling away these older versions. So it's really forcing most people to start using the online version of it. And then just an idea what the pricing cost. Pro Plus is $250 a year. Your Premier Plus is $799 a year, and Enterprise will give you $1,830 per user for up to 30 users, and then the Accountant Edition is $720 a year. So if you were to take the $70 a month like plus version of QuickBooks Online, the plus version, it is more expensive than just outright paying for the annual Accountant Desktop Edition, but it's not too much different. It's just slightly less expensive to use the desktop version. But again, these are products that over time probably will continue to fade away. So I bring this all up because a lot of people do ask the question about which version of QuickBooks, and they might not have even known there are other versions out there. And those of you who have used it in the past, there are differences. Like the desktop version and the online version are all very different. So if you were to have experience using one, some of the fundamentals, of course, are the same, but the screens and how they all lay out and how they work are very different for each version. So it's really like starting over with each version. And lastly, the Mac version, it's $349 a year for anybody who's has a Mac and wants to get the Mac version specifically. But anyway, so that's our discussion on the different versions of QuickBooks. We're going to stay, of course, talking about the online version for the rest of the night. But if anybody has questions, go ahead and fire away. I'll pause for just a second. Okay, hearing nothing, we'll just keep on rolling. I would like to have everybody take a note of this link and hold on to it, because even after tonight's workshop, it's going to be helpful to you. This is a link to access the test drive region to practice using QuickBooks. We're going to use it for class tonight, but you can also use it, of course, in your own experimentation and just learning how to use QuickBooks and doing it safely without disrupting any of your real information. So I'm going to put the link in the chat to everybody, and you can just go ahead and click it and open up the test drive. One other little hint about that is if you are already a QuickBooks Online subscriber and you click that link, it may ask you to log in, which you should not have to do. So if you find that it's trying to log you in, that's probably because you have a cookie saved in your web browser from using your regular subscription, and it just assumes that you want to access QuickBooks as you normally do. So one way around that is to try opening that link using a different browser. So if you normally use Google Chrome, for example, to access your QuickBooks Online subscription, then for tonight's class, I suggest opening up Edge and pasting that link into Edge, or Firefox, or another browser you're comfortable with, to avoid having that issue where it's forcing you to kind of log in, to your own account, because you should be able to use the test drive without having to log in. And it's just one of those little quirks with using the test region. But it works great, and we are going to be experimenting with it here tonight, here in a bit. So again, that is the link, and to copy it and write it down someplace so that you can use it once we're done. Okay, already went through that. All right, so we are gonna talk about the dashboard, because the dashboard is constantly, this is the QuickBooks screen that normally you will see when you first log into the online. They call that the dashboard, and the dashboard will vary over time. In fact, sometimes within the same day, you'll notice different menus, or they'll be configured differently. So the system is constantly changing. And I want to make the point that the QuickBooks test environment, test drive, is probably slightly different than the actual production version of QuickBooks. So if you're a regular subscriber to the QuickBooks Online, and then you go into the test drive, you may notice that there are some different menu items, or they're maybe organized a little differently. So that is not to be concerned, because again, they are constantly experimenting and making changes. And although I don't have anything official that says this, my perception is that the QuickBooks test drive is used often as a testing ground for like new features, and they will sometimes roll it out in test just to have people try it, and note any sort of issues or bugs that they can address. So I do tend to note that the test drive is a little bit more buggy, and that there's lags sometimes in changing screens and different things that you may not see in the regular production region when you log in with your subscription. So but anyway, we're gonna go ahead and go over to QuickBooks and take a look at it. So here, I'm gonna move over there. I'm gonna use the link, and then share my screen. Hold on, give me just a second. Bear with me. Okay, let's go right over here. And okay, so everybody should be seeing my QuickBooks Online screen, the dashboard, by using the link I sent. This is the actual subscription level of this is at least the plus, and perhaps I think maybe the advanced version. So if you're normally a QuickBooks Online subscriber for the essentials, and you log in using this test drive link, you will be able to see all of the features that QuickBooks offers in the test region. So that's another kind of cool thing to do if you're just want to see what the other versions look like, what the other subscription levels look like. Another point about the test drive is, and this is for a fictitious company called Craig's Design and Landscaping Services. So it offers a business that has both inventory and has services. and so you can experiment using a lot of the different features. So anything you do to the company, like if you delete a customer, or if you create an invoice, or if you create a new account in your chart of accounts, or any sort of change that you make to this company, will not harm any of your regular normal business activities with your paid subscription. So and anytime you close the browser and reopen it, all of the work that you have done will disappear, and it will restart with a brand new, fresh copy of this test company. So, so in the class, if we, do some different things together, make sure that, you don't accidentally close the browser if you can help it, because anything we do will be lost and you would have to recreate it. But anyway, let's just kind of look at it. So hopefully you're in it on your computer as well and following along with me. And the best way to learn this is, for you to experiment, on your side as well, and to get used to it. Again, you can't break anything, so you should feel free to jump in and experiment with this. So, so this is the desktop. There are a couple of different tabs across the top of the desktop. It tells you the company that you're in, company name. You also have a tab that says home, and then you have a tab here that says planner. So each of those tabs, provide different things. If you're kind of familiar with QuickBooks, you may not have even realized that you have this planner tab here, but it's for cash flow planning and how to create cash flows. We actually have a separate workshop on cash flow planning where we dive into this a little bit, but just to show you that that's what it does. But most of the time you're going to be brought right to the home tab, and that it gives you a graphical interface, a quick view of how your company is doing. It provides information about the kind of the balance of your accounts, what your sales look like, what your expenses look like, and you can customize that layout for different preferences if you want. And a lot of these are like three-dimensional, like you can drill down into these. So if you were to, I won't do it, but if you were to kind of hover over like where it says checking, and click on these different areas that have links, it will bring you down into the next level. If you wanted to look at like profit and loss, for example, it shows a profit and loss of $645, to the negative. And you can click on, if you hover over where it says income, you can see that you'll get a mouse pointer with a hand on it, which means you can click on it. So if you were to click on that, it would provide you with detailed information about where that $4,400 figure came from. All right, so all of these different things you can click on and explore with more detail if you need to do that. So that's the general basis of the desktop. Of course, you can scroll down, you can see there's expenses, and there's a bunch of information on here. The left navigation bar, left menu, is most commonly just called left menu, is the gray, dark gray or black menu on the left, which allows you to go to the different areas within QuickBooks. You have you can see like transactions. If you were to hover over transactions, a submenu will appear off to the right. That will give you access to your banking activity. Plus, it will give you an opportunity to do an account reconciliation or to look at your chart of accounts, which is kind of the the foundation of this whole process here. Like everything that you do and all of the transactions you create are all stored in your chart of accounts. And it's the basis for accounting for any business, right? It's the different accounts that you create to track different types of income or different types of expenses. I think Valerie was earlier mentioning, some difficulty in learning how to categorize things. So in that chart of accounts is you have one account for each category or one account for each type of expense. So that chart of accounts is your master list, and it's important to know that because I go into the chart of accounts when I use QuickBooks almost all the time. It's something that I think a lot of users don't uh, tend to go there because they are maybe afraid or don't really know what it is. But it gives you really, all access to all of the transactions that you've created behind the scenes. So it's an important area to know where it is. The other common areas would be the sales center.
I have a
So
quick question.
go right ahead.
Though on the transactions, is that where it links to your bank account? And then it
Yeah,
pulls?
actually, it's just the menu will give you access to these different areas of QuickBooks. If you wanted to go in to set up like electronic banking, there is under transactions versus bank transactions. If I were to click on it, it brings me into the banking center where I can set up that information.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll also there are different ways of getting there, and I'll show you another way of accessing some of these things also. But it's um basically this gray menu bar on the left is you'll use like probably 90% of the time. The other one you'll use is the gear menu in the upper right hand corner, which we'll talk about that next. But so going down through real quick, the sales gives you access to the sales center. So anything to do with selling will give you access to your customers, all of the invoices or the cash receipts that you create to record sales, and then expenses naturally is the expenditure of money, like recording all of the money that goes out of your business. So anytime you write a check or use your debit card or credit card, you or just need to record some sort of expenditure, even if it's a cash expenditure. All of those things are done in the expenses area, and also gives you access to your bills, which means that if you have a vendor who you've bought something from and they're going to send you a bill for it and allow you to pay it in a certain amount of time, bills are you can track those balances and track when they're due using the bills feature. So those are real common. The last one you probably spend a lot of time in is reports, because the whole reason we use QuickBooks in the first place is to get information about our business, right? So we tend to, I think, get caught up with how to enter things and how to record them, but the whole reason we do all that is because we should be able to get information based off of that stuff we're entering and make decisions on it. So reports are really the key to all of this. So if you want to prepare your tax return, or if you want to determine what areas of your businesses are excelling and which ones are slow, and which should we eliminate a certain product line, should we be aware that we're spending way too much money in some certain area. So reports are very, very important. And of course, they're only as accurate as the information we put in to QuickBooks. I do have many students who use QuickBooks and say that they don't use all of the features. Like they may say, oh, well, I only use it for invoicing my customers, but I keep track of all my expenses on an Excel spreadsheet. like something like that. And Excel is a very powerful, way of organizing information in of itself, but it is not an accounting program. And in order to get a full and accurate picture of how your business is performing, you really need to put all your information into QuickBooks. That includes all of the money that's coming in, all of the money that's going out. You need to record all of the assets that you own, whether you have vehicles or equipment, tools, all of that stuff should be in QuickBooks in order to get the most accurate information from it. Because otherwise, any sort of report you generate out of the system is not giving you what you need. So, so those are the kind of the key areas here. This new button in the top left on the left menu, on the menu bar, if you click it, is the primary place that you'll go to create new transactions. So you'll see how they're organized in the columns. I have customers and vendors, team, projects, and other. So like for anything customer related, like whether you're creating a customer, an invoice that you're going to send to a customer, or you're going to add a new customer, to track a sale, like anything to do with money coming in, sales receipts, and invoices and everything, you'll find a link in that new button under the customers column. And that's by clicking it, it will bring you to that area. If I have an expense I need to record, then you'll find that expenses would be the place to click, and it will direct you to the right area. So probably you use the new button an awful lot just when you're doing your entry. And the other couple key points here out of the dashboard is the gear menu in the upper right hand corner. You'll see it looks like a little sprocket, and I'll go ahead and click that. This gives you access to settings and features inside of QuickBooks. So if you wanted to manage your QuickBooks account with Intuit, you can do it here. If you want to set up additional users, like if you have a tax preparer who or an accountant who is doing work for you, that you can give them access to your QuickBooks company so they can log in and access the information by setting up additional users. If you want to set up like a special export of information, you want to export a list of your customers, for example, or if you want to import information in the QuickBooks, you'll find those settings under the tools area, right? You also have this lists menu, which is a very important part of QuickBooks, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But lists are so important to how QuickBooks work, is that they have their own menu area so that you can access it. All right, so that's the gear menu. And last is like the search feature. You see the magnifying glass icon and about the fifth icon from the right over here. So that's a great way of finding specific transactions. So if I were to click it, for example, if I'm looking for a transaction for $38.40, for example, I can type into the search bar $38.40 and do a filter. It would locate a transaction in that amount and display it. You can also type in if I was looking for a customer by the name of Bob, I could type in Bob, for example, and it will show me any transactions, that deal. Actually, Bob is a vendor in this case. It would show me any transactions dealing with Bob. So it's just a quick way and a great way of, finding different transactions without having to go hunt and look for them. So So that is the search feature. Let me see if there's anything else here. I think I've covered most of these. Just bear with me, just going through, make sure I covered them all. Talked about centers. Oh, okay. Well, let's go ahead and navigate over to my slides here for a minute. Let's do that. All right. So, these are like three main components of QuickBooks. It's very important to, if anything, if you leave this workshop with just having this information committed to memory, this would be wonderful, because it's understanding really the nuts and bolts of how QuickBooks works. So you'll see the slide that says forms, lists, and registers. So I'll give you examples of each and why we consider them like the three main components of QuickBooks. So forms, examples of forms would be like invoices and checks. Give us the ability to easily enter information into the system. All right, so yeah, let me go change my screen share over and go back to QuickBooks for a minute. And sometimes when I try to open up, when the QuickBooks test, it gets kind of slow. So hopefully this will be kind of zippy tonight. But let me open up an example of an invoice as an example of a form. So the forms are readily identifiable. Like most people who are in a business, run a business, own a business, know what an invoice is. Just as the concept, what it does and what the document is for. I mean, an invoice is what you send to a customer who is not going to pay you at the time of sale. You are going to send them this invoice, and you will give them a certain amount of time to pay it, which is different than a sales receipt, right? A sales receipt is something that you give when you get payment at the time of sale. So if you go to a department store, if you go to Walmart or Target and you buy something, the cash register will spit out a sales receipt. So it's payment at the time of sale. So you can do those in QuickBooks also, but we're talking about invoices. All right. So anyway, an invoice is sent for payment at a later date for some product or service that you're selling. And just waiting for it. It looks a little, it's kind of a little laggy tonight. So we're gonna hopefully this will open up. Let's see here. If I can get it to open. And if you are on your own screen, you can feel free to click on the create invoice screen. So how I got here, I simply went to the left menu over on the left-hand side, the dark gray. I hovered over sales, and I went to the submenu and clicked on invoices, and all sales invoices, and got to the customer center, and then clicked on the green oval that says create an invoice. So it looks like it's finally opened for me now. So these are the different things you'll see on a typical form, right? Not just invoices, but other types of forms. So I have a place where I need to select the customer, like who am I going to bill for this product or service? And I'll say, all right, well, I'll pick Amy's Bird Sanctuary. Happens to be my top customer in the list alphabetically. All right. And then I'll say, well, how much time am I going to give Amy to pay this invoice? So I have a terms drop down, terms list. So I can pick between a number of different terms that I've set up. I can even add new ones if I want. But let's say that I give 15 days. So I'll select net 15. Okay. And then I'll go down further to where it says products or services on the first row labeled number 1. I'll click under products and services, and then there'll be a drop-down box. So I will need to select what it is I'm selling. So it goes to my inventory, my list of things that I have in my inventory that I typically would sell. And I'll say, okay, well, maybe I'll sell design services. So I'll click on that. All right. And then it enters in the information for that, and I can choose the quantity and the price that I want to charge the customer for it. Okay. So at this point now, I've had what, 3 different drop downs, 3 different lists that I've had to interface with in this form, right? I have my customer list, I've had my terms list, and the product services or my items list. So the reason why forms and then secondly lists are 2 of the 3 main components is because the way QuickBooks works is it presents forms throughout the software. And on those different forms, I fill them out using information from the lists that I have created. So by doing so, it brings the 2 together, forms and lists marrying together to create transactions. And you don't have to be a bookkeeper or an accountant to to really know how to properly enter this. I mean, there is some decision making in this. As the user, naturally, you get to pick what it is you're selling and how much you want to sell it for. So there's opportunities to make mistakes, surely. And you could, decide not to enter all the information just to save time, to cut corners. So really, all these transactions are only as good as the person who's entering them. Because QuickBooks will not really care. It does not judge whether you enter enough information or too little information, except in places where it requires it. So in this case, I've now created a $75 invoice for Amy's Bird Sanctuary. I haven't saved it yet, but I'm in the middle of creating it. And now, using forms and lists together to form this transaction. So that's why forms and lists are very, very important. And there are so many lists that I did earlier show you that in the gear menu in the upper right-hand corner, I won't click on it now, but by clicking there, it will show you all of the different lists that QuickBooks will track. And those lists are important. So I'm often asked, well, where do those lists come from? Exactly. And the answer is you create them as the owner, as the person who is setting up QuickBooks and using it, right? So if you have a new business and you're just getting started and you're setting up your QuickBooks subscription for the first time, everything that you enter is going to be brand new. You'll have to enter in your customers. You'll have to enter in your vendors. You'll have to enter in the stuff that you're selling, how much you want to charge for those things. To some extent, you'll have to set up your chart of accounts, the different types of categories that you use to classify expenses, or the different types of income accounts to classify your income, right? All of that gets set up by the person who buys the subscription and gets it started. Excuse me. So there's a couple ways of approaches of doing that. You can set up everything kind of in advance. Like if you say, all right, I'm gonna start using QuickBooks on January 1st. So I'm gonna open my subscription in September, and I'm going to start over the next several months entering in my customers, my vendors. I'm going to get it all ready so that on January 1st, when I go live with the new system, it's all ready to go. So that's one approach. Another approach is to kind of do it as you go, right? So let's say I decide, to start in the beginning of July, halfway through the year. It's a 7th month, so it might be a good place to kind of start without having to wait till January. So you could, just like start in, and then as you create an invoice, I have a customer, you create that customer and set it up as you go along. So that's the other approach to it. So you would, the nature of the business and how many transactions and how long you've been in business, all of those may be factors to determine which is easier for you. But that is just an example of where lists and forms are working together to create transactions. That's why they're two very important parts of the 3 components. So the third component is registers. And to demonstrate why registers are kind of the base of all this, the third of the triad, if you look, I'm just going to take a look at this invoice listing. I can see there's an invoice open for $274.50. Now, just because I see the invoice here in this list, this is not where the invoice is actually stored. It's showing me the invoices, in kind of a report and a screen view, but they're actually stored in your chart of accounts, which means that when the invoice was created for this Shara Barnett design customer for $274.50. Once it was created, QuickBooks created the transaction and saved it in my chart of accounts in the appropriate place. So I'm gonna, on the left menu, hover over transactions on the left menu, and I'm gonna slide over to the submenu and down to where it says chart of accounts, and we're going to open the chart of accounts. And this is essentially my register, my list of registers, my list of accounts, where I have all of my transactions stored. And this is not just a QuickBooks thing. This is just how any accounting system works. You have a chart of accounts which organizes all this stuff. So this listing, there are 5 different account types that are organized. I have my assets, my liability, equity, income, and expenses. And those, like 5 basic account types, are how most any business organize the chart of accounts. So looking at my chart of accounts, I'm going to just scroll down a bit, and I'm going to open up the third one from the top where it says accounts receivable, and I'm going to click on view register. When I open up the account, I will see a listing. What this shows me is all of the transactions of where customers have owed me money, where I've generated invoices that they must pay. So accounts receivable tracks all of the balances due from all of my customers. So anytime I have a new invoice, it goes in to accounts receivable, and anytime it gets paid off, the payment is posted to accounts receivable, so it will zero it out. And if I scroll down the list here, I'm going to scroll down here. I'll go down a little bit further. All right, I see my $274.50, that Shara Barnett design invoice, and there it is, $274.50. So that is where it exists, right? It is stored in this chart of accounts, thus explaining why it's like the third of the 3 main components of QuickBooks. So to recap, right, I have forms like an invoice that marry together with items from different lists. So I pick and choose the different items from lists to create a transaction. And those transactions are stored in my chart of accounts in the correct place, and QuickBooks will store it in the right place for me. So anytime I create a transaction in QuickBooks, QuickBooks will know exactly how to record it. And when we do the 4-night QuickBooks introduction class, we do go into more detail about some of the foundations of accounting and how that all works. In fact, there are, I think SCORE does offer mentorship and classes like workshops on basic like bookkeeping and accounting. Because I think with like Valerie's question, how do you categorize an expense? That topic really has little to do with QuickBooks. It's more about how accounting works and how bookkeeping works. And that's really the best place to learn that, because you get, the basic information, how it all plays together. Then it makes it much easier to know what QuickBooks is doing. But there are many people that use QuickBooks that have no formal or even informal information on like how bookkeeping works or accounting works. And because it's easy to use, all you really need to know is how to fill out an invoice or how to fill out to record an expense. Since QuickBooks is what it's doing is putting it in the right place with direction from you as the user, it handles most of the heavy lifting. So it's easy to really kind of get started and use it. All right, so that's the important piece about the 3 main components of QuickBooks. Let me see what else here. I go back to my slide deck here. How are we doing? Any questions so far? I've been giving you a lot of information. Hopefully you're all still out there. That's one of the disadvantages of doing like the virtual classes, right? Is that people like may need an extra minute or two to grasp a concept. And when you're in person, right, you can kind of look out across the classroom and see when somebody's still trying to figure something out. It's a little tough when you're doing it virtually sometimes. So I'm totally relying on any questions or comments you may have. So all right, so
the only comment I have is like,
Yep.
we don't use QuickBooks for most of the stuff that you just explained. We use it strictly like to do our profits and loss at the end of the year. So I input all of our receipts throughout the year into there, but all of our invoicing and orders and everything go through Square, because that's the terminal that we have at our shop. So it's just
however,
easier to have everything.
sure, understood. Although there is an integration that typically connects Square with QuickBooks, so that automatically that information is brought over.
Like all the invoices and everything and
Right.
transactions.
Right. Yep.
Because we tried to link our bank account too. And it would only pull like random things. It wouldn't pull everything.
Yeah.
Even though
Well,
it's strictly a business account, it wouldn't pull everything. Like me going to the grocery store and stuff, it wouldn't pull any of that stuff. It would only pull random Facebook ad stuff. So then I had to go all back through, and then I tried to relink it, and my bank account isn't even one that I can relink back to it.
Yeah. Well, starting from the very basics of all of this, I should be sure to mention this, right? And this goes to some of what you were saying. When you have a business, there are some very critical things to make sure that it's successful in the record keeping is that any sort of bank account should be exclusive to business. So that's one thing.
Yes.
And it may be that you have it that way, but I want to make sure that and just mention it for everybody is that business, all of the business transactions need to be in its own exclusive business like checking account. Then nothing goes in and out of it except business stuff. So if you need to pay yourself money, like because you want to take some of the profit you've earned and pay yourself, you would formally, write a check to yourself or transfer the money out of the account. But that is like if you were to say go to the grocery store, you would never use the business account to make personal purchases.
It's not personal. I have a coffee shop, so I have to buy milk and
Understood.
cream, and
Understood.
so like all of that it's not personal use, it's business.
Understood. So, but just to make sure that that's clear, because the electronic banking piece, in order for that to work right, is that QuickBooks is going to pull all of the transactions from your bank account, provided, and most bank accounts do have the ability to interface with QuickBooks. Not all of them do. Some of them charge a fee, some it's free. So you really have to check with your institution and find out how that works. And then once you set up that integration, QuickBooks should go in every single day and automatically pull those transactions into QuickBooks. And that's why it's important to make sure that only business transactions go in the bank account. So it pulls them in, then you get to decide how to categorize those different expenses and the income properly. Because QuickBooks really doesn't know what to do with them. It finds them and you put them into categories. If for some reason not all the transactions are coming over, you have to stop and figure out why that is. You can't. The other option is you don't necessarily have to use electronic banking. I have a lot of students who manually enter everything and they don't use electronic banking at all. So
That's what I do now. That's why I use it on my phone, because it's easy to take pictures of the receipts.
Yeah.
Because I can't do that with my computer.
Yep.
And then but QuickBooks will categorize it itself, and then I have to go find it and fix where it categorized it to.
Well, it will only categorize it automatically if you set up a rule for that. So
okay,
like it doesn't do anything by itself without you being involved in it. So
is there a way to change that categorization?
Oh yes, there's a rule. You go into the rules area and you
Okay.
need to fix any of those rules. Like if you have a transaction at Irving and it always goes to like cell phone expenses, it's doing that automatically because somewhere along the way it was told to do that. So you go back through and you can say, no, don't send it there. You should send it to this account instead. So you do have to train QuickBooks over time. And then, once you get it trained, it should follow suit. Now, I will say electronic banking in general is not without its challenges because electronic banking is only based off the bank data, right? So I can use my debit card. I'll use Irving again as an example. Let's say I bought gas at an Irving. When it comes through on the bank statement, it might not even say Irving. It might say POS store number 1297 Portland, Maine. It doesn't say the name of the business, doesn't say anything. So QuickBooks is going to set up a vendor for that entry, thinking it's a brand new customer, and I have to train it. So next time I go through, if the Irving changes how they identify themselves in the system. Like maybe next month they change their store number, or they add a period at the end of the store number, or they change it to Irving and take the store number out. QuickBooks doesn't see it as the same vendor. It will try to set up another new vendor, right? So it's constantly always changing and always evolving, and it's kind of a pain, to be honest with you, to get it all straight. That's why I do have a lot of students that refuse to use the online banking piece and only enter everything manually, period, because then they control the entire process. So it's a matter of like school of thought, how you want to proceed, how you want to do it. But none of these things are completely error-free unless you do it manually. If you do it manually, then you control the entire process. It takes more time, but you're also not fixing as many mistakes. So it's a personal preference, kind of thing. And all of the electronic banking, once you get it set up and working, I have a lot of students who really love it. They kind of have it tweaked to the point where it just works. They don't have much maintenance to do, and it kind of goes like clockwork. And then when they go to reconcile their bank account every month, which you should always do, all the transactions are in there, and it's smooth and easy. So anyway, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up, because it allowed us to talk about electronic banking a little bit. So in general, like, I know you might not use QuickBooks in that way. If you use Square for your coffee shop, know that like all of the sales transactions from Square need to find their way into QuickBooks I would recommend doing it on a daily basis. Like once a day, at the end of the day, you tie them together. Either you use the integration between Square and QuickBooks and get that figured out and working, or you manually create a sales receipt every day and put in the sales figures. You don't need to record every single transaction because Square is capturing each specific transaction, but just summary information for the day, right? How many cups of coffee you sold, how many iced coffees, how many banishes, whatever it is. Each of those sales categories can be just summarized into a kind of a summary report, and you can create one transaction to enter in all of that sales information and capture it in QuickBooks, because you do want to make sure that everything that you're doing in your business, it gets its way into QuickBooks, not just at the end of the year, but often. Like, you can't run a report and figure out what your sales this week are if from QuickBooks, and if you're making money or not, easily, unless you have all the pieces in there. Because in order to figure out whether you're making money, you need to record all of your sales plus all of your expenses in one place, so it can compare the differences between the two. And that that's just a very important part of the process. So, but the sales process in general allows you to record track company sales, record sales receipts and invoices. Like in a coffee shop, I can understand you wouldn't normally create an invoice for your transactions, unless it's a commercial account of some kind, but most people come in and they pay and they leave. So you're dealing with either direct sales receipts, or you may possibly use a sales receipt to record summary information from Square. With that integration, I am not the integration between Square and QuickBooks is not an Intuit product. It's a third-party application so it's QuickBooks like partners with different people, but so I'm not an expert at that. but a lot of my students have used it and think it works pretty well. I think you can actually get all of the transaction level data from Square to come over into QuickBooks, so you have that detail in there. But I'm not positive about that. But once it's set up, it just it should be very, very easy to interface the two, because it's very common. Most everybody, it seems now, is using Square in some form, some sort of widely used POS system to track sales. And QuickBooks naturally will track all that stuff. So when you go into QuickBooks, you can directly record customers into QuickBooks and use QuickBooks to create sales transactions directly, or you can use like a third-party application like Square. Like in this example on your screen, this is the customer screen, where if I wanted to create a new customer called Mill Creek Farmers Market, I can create that customer in QuickBooks, and then I can either enter a sales receipt, which is I'm recording a sale where they pay at the time of sale, or I can record an invoice where they're going to buy now and pay later. And that's part of the functionality of the sales feature within QuickBooks. So creating a sales receipt is really easy. We simply go into the New button in the upper left-hand corner of the screen where it says New. Under the customer column, you select sales receipt, okay? And it opens up a sales receipt form. You fill out who you sold it to, what you sold, and save it, and it will record that transaction. So it's very, very easy to record sales. Same thing with invoices, which are, again, payment that occurs after a later point, where you track the balance in accounts receivable in QuickBooks. It's easy to create an invoice. Again, you click that New button in the upper left-hand corner, and instead of sales receipt, this time you simply select invoice, and it will open up an invoice form. And it very much looks like a sales receipt, except that it's got the title invoice on it. And then you fill out, what you've sold, and it too gets recorded. Okay, so those are the two main ways of recording individual sales transactions. But those transactions, of course, are all stored in your chart of accounts. So to look at them, if you were to go into the accounting menu item and click on chart of accounts and open up, the accounts receivable register, like we did earlier tonight, it will show you all of the transactions that are recorded there that you created. If it's in the case of Square, and you're not bringing over individual transaction data, but just the summary information, you'll see it in your income accounts, right? You will see all of those sales transactions being recorded for each day, provided you enter it every day. Then you can get like an accurate financial picture of your business in the dashboard, provided all that is entered in. You can then use QuickBooks to record payments from customers, right? If you create an invoice and then they subsequently pay you, you need to tell QuickBooks that invoice is paid and the balance has now been satisfied. Those are easy to record as well. Using the New button in the upper left-hand corner, again, under the Customers category, there's an option for receiving a payment. And I select it, and it opens up the payment screen where I select the customer that's paying, how much they're paying, which invoices they're paying, and then, it records it. So in a nutshell, that's just kind of how the sales lesson works. And just to give you a brief overview also of expenses, expenses is where we're, naturally spending money and recording, how we spend money and how we categorize, each of those expenses. There are different ways of entering expenses, but you have two basic scenarios. You have what we call cash vendors, or vendors where we pay them at the time of purchase, right? We use our debit card, we write a check, and we go to their business and we buy some product or service, and we don't enter any sort of bill. We just pay it, and that's the end of it. We just record it. Under a credit scenario, QuickBooks has the ability to track that purchase, to track the bill, and then how much you owe that vendor and the ultimate payment of that bill. And that uses the accounts payable account. So two different options. So especially for a point for like Valerie with your coffee shop, right? I mean, if you might have vendors that you do business with, that like food service companies that deliver things. If they give you a bill that you then have 15 days or 30 days to pay, that would be an opportunity to enter a bill into QuickBooks in advance so that you can keep track of the balance and when it's due, and then mark that invoice is paid in the system. Some students will ask, well, what's the purpose of entering in a bill if I always pay all my bills? And if that's the case, like if you always immediately pay the bill as soon as you get it, and you don't bother to enter it in the QuickBooks, I can see that point. But if you typically wait till it's close to the due date to make the payment, I would enter that stuff into QuickBooks in advance and use QuickBooks as a cash flow planning tool and to track those balances, because it's very easy to forget them or to go past the due date. And also any point in time which you look at your business, if those bills are entered in and have not been paid, it will be reflected in the financial picture of how things are looking. So you may think that you're making a larger profit than what you are, simply because the bill has not been entered into QuickBooks. So but anyway, entering expenses is easy. You can enter the vendors in which you do business with in QuickBooks. Anybody that you buy products or services from can be entered, and then you can track all of your activity with those vendors. So it's easy to set up a vendor by simply going to the expense menu on the left side and then clicking on vendors. It will give you the option to create a new vendor, and then you can enter in their information. It's very similar to the way of entering customers. You can track their name, their address, and how much, like if you have a typical expense account that you use with them, like a certain kind of thing that you always buy from them, you can set up like a default expense account so that anytime you do business with them, it automatically inserts that expense category into the transaction, which you can change, of course, at any time. But so you can do some certain things to help speed up the process when you're entering expenses. And then you can naturally pay the vendors. One large piece, because I know we're getting close on time here. One large piece of this is using the expense forms. And within QuickBooks, when you go inside of an expense form, it's probably the primary place where you will enter in any sort of expense transactions and record it. So here, I'll go into QuickBooks and we'll show you like where that is. So I'm going to click on the button, go back to QuickBooks. So on the left-hand menu, you'll see expenses. And then you'll see on the sub-menu, expenses again. So we'll click on expenses. And this is kind of one central place where you can record all your expenses, different, whether it's you're writing a check or a debit card or any sort of expense transaction, you can record it here. In the upper right-hand corner, you see there's an option for new transaction, I can enter one by clicking that green button. You'll also you can access the same area by simply using the new button in the upper left-hand corner. When you click new, it will open up under vendors expense, right? And that's another way of just jumping to a brand new expense transaction and opening it up. But it will open up a form, just like we talked about earlier. Forms are kind of the key, rudimentary way, in which you interface with QuickBooks. Forms will make it easier for you to create transactions. So there's an expense form, and you simply fill it out, where you bought it, who you paid, what it was for, which account, like is it coming out of your checking account or savings or whatever, you reflect the account it was, when the payment took place, what form of payment, and then you can categorize it as to what type of expense it is. And just a note generally about expense categories, there are some common ones that most businesses will have, but each business can have specific ones that you create, right? A coffee shop might have different expenses than an attorney's office, right? Because you might have different types of insurance, or you may have a refrigeration equipment or whatever it is. You can categorize it based off of your business, and that whole exercise of creating categories, it's really a discussion less about QuickBooks, again, as I said earlier, but more about from like a bookkeeping or accounting standpoint, what makes sense for me, for my type of business, and what would be some good expense categories for me to use. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the end of our introduction tonight. We're moving now to the end of our session. Just wanted to see if anybody had any questions or comments before we close out, because I know it's a lot of information I've given you, and apologize for the speed in which I've given it to you, but it's just as an overview, there's just a little bit of time that we have together, so trying to make sure everybody gets their questions answered and that it's clear. So I see there was a hand up from somebody. Go right ahead. Go ahead, Leslie. Oh, hold on. Let me unmute you so you can jump in there. You should be able to unmute. Sure.
Thanks. My big question is, do you have to use QuickBooks to write all your checks, or do you use a regular banking account to do that?
You can do either.
Either.
Yeah, you can print checks in QuickBooks. If you buy like pre-printed check paper, blank check paper, it's pre-numbered, right? You order that. You can load that into your printer, and you can use QuickBooks to print checks for you. Or you can handwrite the checks and simply type them into QuickBooks. Or you can connect your bank account electronically to QuickBooks and have QuickBooks go and pull the information from your bank account as it clears. The thing about checks, of course, is you could write a check that somebody doesn't cash for 3 months, right? So I would always encourage anybody to enter the checks manually into QuickBooks, because you may think you have more money than you actually do, right? So there's always a timing difference with checks, even with debit cards to some extent. Most things, clear within a day or two, but there are sometimes, like in a restaurant, it's a good example. If you use a credit card and then you enter a tip into the transaction, it may not be 2 or 3 days, especially over a long weekend, that transaction doesn't actually hit your bank account. So it's just with certain types of things, I always would encourage you to enter them manually. And even if you enter a manual like check transaction and you connect your bank accounts, when that transaction comes through and actually clears, it will match it up to the manual one that you've entered, so you won't get duplicates. So it works kind of nice with checks to probably enter them in advance. That would be my tip, I guess. Hopefully
Okay.
that answers the question.
Yeah, that helped. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? I see there's a couple people that may have joined late, maybe. So I didn't have you unmuted earlier. So I've now given everybody the ability to unmute your microphones and ask questions. All right. Well, I don't hear anything. So if that's all, well, then I would like to express my appreciation for all of you joining me tonight. It was great to meet all of you. I know it was very brief and I give you a lot of information, but I hope it was helpful, and I hope that you would consider, other SCORE workshops. We do have other QuickBooks workshops coming up. I do believe there's one next week. It's on a different topic. Tonight was the kind of the primer course, the introduction. But we do have one on. Let me just double check here. It is. Is it the Wednesday the 11th? Yes, 12th. I'm sorry. So Wednesday the 12th, we have it's another 6 to 7:30 session. That one is specifically going to talk about cash flow and reporting. So it's a kind of a different subject area. And if you've not already signed up, we encourage you to do that. I think you will enjoy it, and it's always helpful to get as much information as you can about QuickBooks because there's a lot to it. And we appreciate you joining us tonight. It's been great to meet all of you, and hopefully you'll see you at a future workshop, and wish you all a pleasant evening. So thank you for joining.
So, Michael,
Yes,
so this is on Eastern Standard Time?
Eastern. Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Oh, sure. Where are you from?
Texas.
Oh, from Texas. Nice.
Yeah, so I missed I missed a great part of the presentation, but hopefully you are able to email it.
I recorded tonight's session.
Okay.
And
Okay, perfect.
I will have our SCORE team email out all of you a link to the recording.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sure. And welcome to Maine virtually.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Well, thank you all very much again. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.